Tonight at 10, Dominic Raab resigns from government but hits back after some bullying claims against him are upheld. A report finds he acted in an intimidating and insulting manner, but Mr Raab says he thinks some civil servants have their own agenda.
What you've got is the risk here of a very small minority of very activist civil servants with the passive-aggressive culture of the civil service who don't like some of the reform, effectively trying to block government. That's not on, that's not democratic.
Well, the big question for the Prime Minister is why he was so weak to appoint him in the first place. The second question for the Prime Minister is why he didn't sack him, and now it's left to Dominic Raab to resign.
We'll be looking at where this leaves Rishi Sunak, also on the programme. The business group, the CBI, in crisis. It suspends key activities as a second allegation of rape emerges and dozens of firms end their membership. The casualties mount and the UN says there are now over 400 dead in the fighting in Sudan between rival factions of the army.
On BBC London, with just over 4 months to go until the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone, a call for more Londoners to apply for the scrappage scheme.
Good evening. The Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary Dominic Raab has resigned from government after a report upheld some bullying claims against him. Speaking to the BBC in his first TV interview following his resignation, he hit out at what he called activist civil servants, claiming they were effectively wanting to block government reform, and he suggested the report sets a dangerous precedent. Mr Raab was investigated after at least 8 formal complaints at 3 different departments. Today's report says his behaviour was at times intimidating, insulting and unreasonably and persistently aggressive. In his resignation letter, Mr Raab said he believed the findings were flawed and that the report had set the threshold for bullying too low. Mr Raab's resignation is the 3rd cabinet departure since Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, and the 2nd over bullying claims. Mr Sunak said he accepted the resignation with great sadness and admitted there had been shortcomings with the process. Alex Chalk takes over now at the Ministry of Justice and Oliver Dowden becomes Deputy Prime Minister. Our political editor Chris Mason reports.
The man who was Deputy Prime Minister until this morning. The man who was Justice Secretary but now claims something of an injustice in how his conduct is seen. The man who said he'd resign if an allegation of bullying was upheld and has now resigned, but thinks the inquiry that finished him off was flawed.
Is this a stitch-up?
Look, I wouldn't describe it that way. I resigned from Cabinet today because I said I would if there was any adverse finding from this inquiry, and I'm true to my word. Politicians should be. But I do think it sets a very dangerous precedent. If you look at the Tolley report, it dismissed almost all of the claims against me. It found I'd never once in 4.5 years lost my temper, sworn, shouted, anything of that nature. But it also highlighted maybe 2 or 3 instances where I'd been what they described as unintentionally abrasive.
So what is in Adam Tolley Casey's report? The senior lawyer says Dominic Raab acted in a way which was intimidating in the sense of unreasonably and persistently aggressive conduct. It also involved an abuse or misuse of power in a way that undermines or humiliates, adding he went further than was necessary or appropriate in delivering critical feedback and was insulting. Mr Tolley also says Mr Raab was abrasive and had described work done for him as utterly useless and woeful, a description reasonably understood as insulting personal criticism.
Isn't the blunt truth, when you read all of this report, that a fair-minded person reading it would conclude that, I mean, to be crude, that you're a nightmare to work for?
Well, actually, almost all of the complaints against me were dismissed. And what this doesn't give you, it's a handful of very senior officials. None of the junior complaints were upheld. And I got on and dealt with hundreds of civil servants, thousands of other people in prison service and the court service. And what you've got is the risk here of a very small minority of very activist civil servants, with the passive-aggressive culture of the civil service, who don't like some of the reforms, whether it's Brexit, whether it's parole reform, whether it's human rights reform, effectively trying to block government. That's not on, that's not democratic.
Activist civil servants, that's quite an allegation for people who are committed to being impartial. You're saying there's people there who are standing in the way of an elected government?
Oh, I was told that by one cabinet secretary and by one Director of Propriety and Ethics in the Cabinet Office, which brings...
Did you witness that? Did you see work that you thought from civil servants was effectively, as you describe it, activist?
No, so that wasn't the description that I gave. I said that if you've got particularly activist civil servants who, either because they're overly unionised or just don't agree with what we're trying to pursue, we've seen a bit of that with Brexit, we've seen it with human rights reform, with my parole reform. There's a little bit of cultural, if you like, aversion. If actually they can block reforms or changes through a rather passive-aggressive approach, we can't deliver for the British people.
Strikingly, on the day the Prime Minister has lost his deputy, Rishi Sunak hasn't managed to find any of our cameras. In a letter to Dominic Raab, he said he accepted his resignation with great sadness, but appeared to acknowledge the whole affair has been a mess, writing, "There have been shortcomings in the historic process that have negatively affected everyone involved." The Liberal Democrats said Mr Raab should resign as an MP as well. Labour wanted to focus on Rishi Sunak's judgment.
What I think this shows is the continual weakness of the Prime Minister, because there's a double weakness here. He should never have appointed him in the first place, along with other members of the Cabinet that shouldn't have been appointed. And then he didn't sack him. And even today, it's Raab who resigns rather than the Prime Minister who acts.
He has acted, mind, in having to find a new Justice Secretary, this man, Alex Chalk. And there's promotion for Oliver Dowden, who becomes the new Deputy Prime Minister.
Do some senior civil servants need a thicker skin?
If it's not intentional, if it's not personalised, if actually it is right, but there are some subjective hurt feelings by some, I'm afraid that makes it very difficult to deliver, and it's not what you'd see in most walks of professional life. But of course I don't want to upset anyone, and I made clear that I'm sorry for that, but that's not bullying, and we can't deliver for the British people if the bar is that low.
Rishi Sunak tonight has to attempt to deliver for the country without his long-standing ally and former deputy. Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
Well, Dominic Raab is not the first government minister to face allegations of bullying, and today's report puts the spotlight once again on the relationship between some ministers and the civil servants who work in their departments. Our deputy political editor Vicky Young takes a closer look now at the workplace culture in Whitehall.
Dominic Raab is the most senior minister to be caught up in a bullying scandal, but this isn't an isolated case. Over the past few years, anger about the workplace culture here at Westminster has increased as examples emerged of unacceptable behaviour in MPs' offices and government departments. When Priti Patel was Home Secretary, an independent report concluded she'd broken the ministerial code of conduct after shouting and swearing at officials.
Are you a bully?
Well, I'm here to give an unreserved apology today. And I am sorry if I have upset people in any way whatsoever.
Despite the findings, Boris Johnson refused to sack her and his ethics advisor resigned in protest. This former Whitehall official says outspoken attacks on the civil service by advisors like Dominic Cummings have soured relations.
We get the very best outcomes in government when ministers and civil servants work together, when civil servants believe in their ministers and ministers are able to get the very best out of their civil servants. So, name-calling, lack of trust, inability to get people on side, intimidation, aggressive behaviour are corrosive for the individuals involved, but actually it undermines our system of government.
Mr Raab and the union representing senior civil servants agree on one thing: there has to be a better system to resolve disputes.
There should be HR processes for dealing with complaints against ministers. There should be something written down, because a civil servant who wants to complain to you about a minister can't even look at a procedure. There's nothing in writing about how they do it. So it's a completely inadequate process. If that's the view of ministers who have been through this, it's also the view of the civil servants who have to make complaints.
While this episode is of course about the actions of one man, it's reignited the debate about working practices here at Westminster and what is and isn't acceptable behaviour. It's also a reminder of the tension sometimes between politicians trying to drive through their agenda and the impartial civil service, there to point out potential flaws in their arguments. There is another ongoing investigation involving Sir Gavin Williamson. He's already resigned to clear his name after being accused of sending abusive messages to his colleague Wendy Morton, whose words at the time remain relevant today.
I want to see Parliament actually restore some integrity into the whole of the organisation.
There are many working here who think we're still a long way away from that. Vicky Young, BBC News, Westminster.
Let's go back to our political editor, Chris Mason at Westminster. So, Chris, Rishi Sunak loses a third cabinet minister. Where does this leave the Prime Minister?
The day any Prime Minister loses their deputy, Rita, is a difficult day in Downing Street. And the oddity today is that we haven't actually seen and heard from Rishi Sunak on a day where his opponents are calling him weak, on a day where his deputy and loyal campaigner has left government. No answers from Rishi Sunak to big questions. Would he have sacked Dominic Raab? Does he agree with his analysis? At some point he will have to face those questions. As far as Mr Raab's analysis is concerned, I can tell you there are plenty of civil servants who do not agree with it tonight, perhaps unsurprisingly, suggesting it was a kind of concocted conspiracy theory to deflect from the criticisms that he faced in that report. A report, it's worth emphasising, that is complex and is nuanced and is subtle, perhaps inevitably because in attempting to understand behaviours and how they are interpreted, it's kind of in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? And the stomach as well, really. And that's why I think there will be, as Vicky was reflecting, a broader debate here at Westminster about the oddities of this place as a workplace, and indeed a debate around the country about acceptable workplace practices in 2023. As far as the Prime Minister is concerned, he'll be glad all of this is over, but he doesn't need too many more days like this.
Chris, thank you very much. The business lobby group, the CBI, has said it is suspending key activities until June after dozens of firms announced they are leaving the group or pausing their membership. It follows a second allegation of rape from a woman who told the Guardian newspaper that she was assaulted by CBI colleagues. Our business editor Simon Jack is here. This really is turning into a crisis now for the CBI, isn't it?
It really is, Rita. Up to now, companies have largely said they would wait for the results of an investigation into an existing alleged rape, plus some other misconduct issues, before deciding their relationship with the CBI. But this second allegation of rape we saw today saw a trickle of companies quitting turn into a flood. Aviva, Phoenix Group, and in fact they've got a list here which I had to update every 5 minutes this afternoon. People leaving include people like Lloyds of London, Schroders. NatWest said British business needs a strong representative voice. Given the extremely serious allegations made against the CBI, we no longer have confidence that it can fulfil this role at the present time. Dozens either leaving, quitting their membership or pausing it. Now, the CBI is trying to move at pace. They're going to release this report early next week. They're bringing the former employee, Rain Newton-Smith, back as the new Director General in a matter of days. But it's unclear right now what kind of organisation she's coming back to. And bear in mind, given the seriousness of the allegations, the police are now involved. So a lot of people are saying it is not a given that even when this report comes out, we'll feel comfortable re-engaging with an organisation with police investigations overhanging it. So that could take months, and so many will not re-engage on that basis. So make no mistake, the future of this nearly 60-year-old organisation is in serious doubt this evening.
Simon, thank you. Earlier this year, a devastating earthquake struck Turkey and Syria. But while aid did reach the affected areas in Turkey, survivors in Syria have told the BBC that they feel forgotten. More than 7,000 people died when the tremor hit the northwest of Syria, which is under rebel control and already suffering from the effects of 12 years of civil war. Our Middle East correspondent Anna Foster reported extensively from the region at the time, and she's now travelled to the Syrian province of Idlib.
First, there were the scars of a long and painful conflict. Then, the fresh wounds of a devastating earthquake. This home carries them both. More than 4 million people fled to Idlib looking for safety. But on that February night, in this war-ravaged land, they didn't find it. The twin earthquakes killed thousands. 300 died in this building alone. Cedra is 13. She and her brother Abdullah have cerebral palsy. The extra care they need isn't possible now. I was very scared. We started screaming for help, but no one could hear us. Everyone in the building had left, but we were stuck because the door handle broke.
This is where you really see the impact of a devastating and long-lasting conflict like this one. This home was already partly destroyed by an airstrike. And just imagine how terrifying it must have been to wake in the dark, feeling those first tremors of an earthquake and knowing that this was all you had for protection. This family was lucky to even escape alive.
In Asmarin, the living sleep next to the dead. Ali Sheikh Hazem Khanam, the surviving patriarch, remembers them all. Ahmed. Adel and his children. Allah. Men, women and children, all buried together in this mass grave. Majed. Fauzi. Amir, just 3 years old. Children who only ever knew conflict in their short lives.
16 buildings collapsed on the residents, and people and children went missing. We were already suffering from the war and everything the criminal Bashar al-Assad did to us. Then this earthquake came and increased our suffering.
7,000 fresh graves, a new level of destruction in a country that's already lost so much. Anna Foster, BBC News, Idlib.
The schools watchdog in England says it'll make changes to the way that inspections are carried out after the suicide of a head teacher in January. Ruth Perry took her own life while waiting for the publication of an Ofsted report which was about to downgrade her school to inadequate. But Ofsted says it will keep the single-word overall grade for schools despite calls to abandon them. Here's our education editor, Branwen Jeffries.
A small primary school like thousands of others. After inspection, it was judged inadequate. There were concerns about checks on staff and records of safeguarding. Ruth Perry, the head teacher, took her life while waiting for the report. Her sister Julia agreed to speak to me for the first time after the family raised concerns.
Other teachers, head teachers, live in fear, but I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the number of people from all different quarters who've got in touch with me or who were just speaking out.
Ofsted has said it is looking again at how inspections are handled, but for Ruth's family, that's not enough.
What I think needs to happen and should have happened already is a pause in inspections. No, there is no doubt in my family's mind at all that Ruth killed herself because of that Ofsted inspection. She was fine beforehand. She was not fine during and after it.
You're grieving, and so's the whole family, for your sister. Why are you putting your energy into this?
I have such a feeling of such profound injustice around this. Ruth was an excellent teacher, an exemplary head teacher. If this could happen to her, it just doesn't bear thinking about that Ruth can have died and it'll be for nothing. This is, well, I feel there has to be something good comes out of this tragedy.
Today, the Chief Inspector, Amanda Spielman, said in a statement, "We are not deaf to the calls for change or insensitive to the needs of schools and their staff." She said, "We won't be soft on safeguarding, but would reflect changes schools make more quickly. And parents find the grading system useful, so the single overall grade will stay. Some agree schools have to be held to account like this for children's education."
Parents trust us with the safety, well-being and education of their children. And it must be right that we build public confidence by being open and transparent in everything that we do.
Schools are still recovering from the pandemic. One reason perhaps for the response to these events. The government backs inspections continuing. Head teachers' unions say Ofsted has misjudged the strength of feeling. An inquest will look at Ruth Perry's death later this year. Bronwyn Jeffries, BBC News.
And the head of Ofsted, Amanda Spielman, will be one of Laura Kunsberg's guests this Sunday morning. That's at 9 o'clock on BBC Two. In Sudan, despite calls for a ceasefire for the Eid holiday marking the end of Ramadan, there's been an escalation in fighting, with gunfire and explosions heard across the capital, Khartoum, including in residential neighbourhoods. The UN says more than 400 people have now been killed, with more than 3,500 injured in the violence. The fighting broke out a week ago between the army, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, led by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo. Our correspondent Mohammed Osman, who works for the BBC Arabic service, is in Khartoum and is one of the few journalists reporting from the city, where 5 million inhabitants are living in fear.
Battles have been going for a week in Khartoum. Insecurity is increasing, but some still went to pray. They could hear fighting from across the city.
We were afraid, but there is nothing we can do about it. We're used to praying here every Eid. The streets were empty, which frightened us, but we hope that next Eid things will be better.
It's a sad Eid. We hope that God raises this hardship and protects everyone. Sudan doesn't deserve this. Sudan doesn't deserve this. These people fighting should see how the situation in the country turned out to be and how people are handling it.
From this conflict, a humanitarian crisis, hundreds dead, thousands injured, most hospitals shut. The army's leader still hopes for victory.
The destruction and sounds of bullets have left no room for happiness, which our people all over our beloved country deserve. We're truly saddened by how events have unfolded, but hope remains that we will overcome this ordeal.
The streets here are empty. It is hard for people to get food and clean water. The BBC spoke to one British man who is trapped with his wife and 2 children.
We are not leaving where we are. I mean, we're living in one room and running to the basement when it gets bad. We sleep in the basement, so it's far too dangerous to leave.
Some are making the dangerous journey out of the capital, despite the risk.
We were born here, but the fight is near us, and we can't sleep because of fear. We left our homes, my children, and I went towards the city of Mashimadi.
People left here don't have the luxury of time. They are hoping their prayers will be answered, and soon. Mohammed Osman, BBC News, Khartoum.
The former treasurer of a Gaelic football club in Northern Ireland has been jailed for 16 years for sexually abusing boys and young men. Thomas McKenna, who's 62, pleaded guilty to 162 charges in relation to the attacks at Crossmaglen Rangers Gaelic Football Club in County Armagh. The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he intends to take legal action against the Royal College of Nursing Union over its planned strike from April the 30th to the 2nd of May. NHS employers wrote to Mr Barclay asking him to check the legality of the action because the RCN's mandate to strike ends in early May. Around 45,000 people will be taking to the streets of London on Sunday for this year's marathon. Among them will be a woman in her 70s going for a world record, and a man who's terminally ill will have to walk all the way. Sophie Rayworth reports.
She may be 72, but Yuko Gordon is still running around 40 miles every week as she tries to break a world record by finishing in under 3 hours and 24 minutes.
The gold medal, the first ever in the ladies' marathon, to Joan.
This is the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics, the first time women were allowed to compete in the event. It was won by an American, but Yuko ran it too.
No sign of distress at all.
There you are. Amazing.
My PB was 2:41 then, but I did 2:46. That was pity. This one.
Yuko, who was an air hostess at the time, quit soon after, but started running again in her 60s. And now she has this woman in her sights, Jeannie Rice, who broke the over 70s record in Chicago in 2018.
I don't think I'm super fit like a couple of years ago, but I have no reason to be unfit either. So it all depends on the day. I'm very lucky physically. I have no knee problem. If I could go under 3:24 would be nice.
That would be a world record.
Yeah.
We've also got our amateur world champion down. Welcome, Yuko.
She may be modest, but her local running club in Stevenage are very proud of her and are hoping for a fast time.
I'll be walking like a hiker.
Moth Wynne just wants to get round. 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with a rare terminal neurological disease called CBD and given just a few years to live. But he discovered walking helped his symptoms. And since then, he and his wife, the author Raina Wynne, have walked right across Britain, defying all expectations.
The walking clearly had a
really positive.
It was, and it was a more calming effect. You know, the shaking started to ease and disappear.
Now they're getting ready to lace up for Sunday's challenge.
I don't think you'll have any problem covering the 26 miles. It's just a matter of time.
I'm certainly going to give it my best shot.
And that was Moth Wynne ending that report by Sophie Rayworth. England captain Leah Williamson will miss this summer's World Cup with a knee injury. The 26-year-old Arsenal defender was injured in a match against Manchester United on Wednesday and will now undergo surgery. The Lionesses are due to begin their World Cup campaign against Haiti on July the 22nd. In the Premier League tonight, Arsenal and Southampton served up one of the best games of the season so far. The Gunners coming back from 3-1 down to draw 3-3 and to keep their stuttering title hopes alive. Our sports correspondent Natalie Perks watched the action.
It was top versus bottom, with both sides feeling the pressure under the lights. Arsenal's gallop to the title has stuttered of late, and their nerves were on show right from the off.
Arsenal concede. Alcaraz.
Carlos Alcaraz couldn't believe his luck as the Emirates was stunned into silence.
Come in, look at Mikel Arteta there.
Sad disbelief. Time for a good talking to. It worked. Arsenal's deficit was halved in the blink of an eye. Mere seconds later, Saka made it 3-3. A thrilling draw, though, that helped neither side, as Arsenal's title dream is looking shaky, with Manchester City up next. Natalie Perks, BBC News.
Time for a look at the weather now. Here's Darren. Darren.
Hello there, Rita. We'll have a look at the forecast for the marathon in just a moment, but the weather is certainly changing. And over the next few days, the weather is going to be turning more unsettled, so there's going to be more rain in more parts of the country, and temperatures are going to be dropping everywhere as well. And a significant change this weekend is going to be in Northern Ireland and in Scotland, where we've seen some more warm sunshine today, and those temperatures have been 17, even 19 degrees again in Highland, Scotland. But look what happens by Sunday, a significant drop in temperature as we get some northerly winds. Before then, though, we've got a bit of rain just heading its way overnight into Northern Ireland, into southern Scotland, still affecting parts of northern England. Either side of that, it should be dry, clearer skies and a touch of frost in some parts of Scotland, and a chilly start tomorrow for southern areas of England and Wales, maybe one or two early mist and fog patches as well. This rain now is really slowing down. It's going to be affecting Northern Ireland, so a big change in the weather here. Some rain for southern Scotland, some showers maybe developing across England and Wales, and something a bit wetter coming into the southwest of England as well. To the north of that band of rain, we could see some sunshine away from low cloud in northeast Scotland. Temperatures could reach 16 degrees, perhaps in that sunshine, but otherwise temperatures are evening out around about 11 to 14 degrees. And this is the forecast for the marathon. Not great news. It's going to be cool, but it looks like we've got some rain, particularly in the morning. And this could be one of the wettest parts of the country, actually, on Sunday. We've got this rain developing in the southeast, pushing into East Anglia. Elsewhere, we're going to find a little bit of sunshine, but not a lot. And there will be some showers. Those could be turning a bit wintry, even over the mountain tops in Scotland. And a really strong wind is picking up in northern Scotland. That's dropping the temperatures. Still could make 13 or 14 degrees across southern parts of England and Wales. But that colder air that's in the north on that northerly wind is going to come flooding southwards. And for all of us by Monday, it will be much colder. And it looks like that colder weather is going to hang on into next week as well. Slowly, those temperatures will be creeping up, but we've got some more wet weather in the forecast as well. Rita.
OK, Darren, thank you. And that is tonight's BBC News at 10. There is, of course, more analysis of the day's main stories on Newsnight. That's with Victoria Derbyshire. There she is, just getting underway on BBC Two. But the news continues here on BBC One, as now it's time to join our colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. From the 10 o'clock team, it's good night.